Giddy up, people. Sorry for the jump scare. Welcome, everyone, to another week where me, your friend Carlz, talks about comic books. Well, we finally have some. Is it big news? Not necessarily. I don't think it's big news, but it's news worth mentioning. It seems that finally Marvel is trying something to make their own absolute universe in a way. I don't know. They just announced this new imprint, if you can call it, called Marvel Midnight, with a few titles announced. It's gonna be Midnight X-Men, Midnight Spider-Man, and Midnight Fantastic Four, I think. So, what is this? Not necessarily suspicious, but worth mentioning thing. The description in the announcement is clearly an attempt, you can say, at some sort of an absolute kind of. If you guys remember the beginning of the Absolute Universe at DC, many of the taglines were, for example, for Absolute Batman was like, Batman without his money. Like, what is Batman without his money, and some stuff like that. But anyways, by now we all know and we are aware that the Absolute Universe is this more. I hate the word greedy because it's been reused a lot of times, but it's a more intense sort of version of these characters. Later we learned that it was Darkseid behind the Absolute Universe, but regardless of that, the most praise the Absolute Universe has gotten is related to this possibility of watching these characters with a sort of clean slate, experiencing them from the beginning, grow with them, and see how they are framed. And they are framed in a context that I wouldn't call darker or grittier, but more intense. Like, all of the Absolute characters are kind of like the same of the main universe versions, but they are intensified. Like, you can remember all of them. Absolute Green Lantern began with the destruction of a town, so all the emotional spectrum was like exploding. Absolute Batman also began with this unhinged Batman who looked like a monster. Absolute Wonder Woman began with her fighting a kaiju, you know, with her huge ass sword. Absolute Superman was this kind of like Che Guevara rebellious sort of figure fighting against the system. We can all remember the Absolute Batman annual where he kicked a cop's ass. Martian Manhunter is the psychotic alien, and we still don't really know exactly what he is. I guess he is an alien, but he hunts the mind of this less than less than perfect detective. Like, they have been intensified versions of all characters, but they all have followed somehow most of the spirit of the original character. They are absolutizing, if you can call it like that. But Midnight seems like another thing. Midnight apparently is gonna be like horror oriented. It's like all these characters, but like in horror settings. Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. My main worry about it is that the horror setting is not a huge setting. I mean, it's not a world building setting. If you have every Absolute title in the Absolute lineup for DC has been a world building title. Like, it's not limited to one, let's say, scenario. Whereas if you do like a horror setting, I think it conditions that a lot, like vampires and zombies, and plus we have seen that a lot. The one thing that sort of let us know that this is an attempt at an absolute universe. There's some descriptions in the announcement that are clearly using those words like darker and more violent, and like, you know, I think Marvel never really nailed it, like with the Marvel Knights or the Red Band stuff. The closest we had to the absolute universe was the Ultimate Universe, which wasn't necessarily grittier characters, but they were just a little bit different and they felt fresh. Or remember that Heroes Reborn bullshit? Man, that shit was terrible. But anyways, Marvel Midnight, it's gonna come with these tryout titles. Everybody's talking about how Jonathan Hickman is coming back to the X-Men, but I don't know. I feel like Marvel keeps Jonathan Hickman just in case. Like they give him space and then they take it away. It's super bizarre how it works. But apparently that's the thing that's gonna be continuing happening. Whatever. Well, we'll see what happens when Marvel Midnight comes out. When was it? Shit, I had it. I had it written down and then I forgot. August 2026. We'll see. We'll see. The bar is pretty high with the Absolute Universe. And now let's go right into this week's picks. I'm pretty sure I recommended Blood and Thunder some like months ago. I don't think I have updated on it. I thought it was a really cute concept, or like a cute, like fun concept of this newfound orphan wearing or like wielding a talking gun, who knew her father, like whatever. It was a fun idea. The whole first story arc of the book was entertaining and it was fairly okay. We had her catching the quote-unquote bad guy. I'm not gonna spoil the whole thing, but basically we had a progression of the character and of the story that eventually led to her kind of like switching sides. I don't want to say like explicitly switching sides, but the thing is, I never thought Blood and Thunder was gonna be a 2-story arc book. I don't go that much into the news or looking for specifically the future of a book. I like to be surprised. So when the first story arc obviously came into an end and all the pieces were played, I didn't thought they were trying to expand it. But it was a fun surprise, you can say. Now we're having the book going into a whole different direction, which will expand on the lore behind her and her crazy hair, her father, and the system she was working on. Which at the same time feels like quite a natural progression for the story. Which is kind of nice. I mean, it is nice. Plus, sometimes you get kind of like used to the short-lived stories, especially in Image and so on and so forth. Even more than Marvel and DC, I think these books are really conditioned on success. I'm not sure. I mean, I don't work in the editorial room, but I always thought about it. Like these guys, they probably get less space to succeed, you know. But anyways, we're getting a second story arc for Blood and Thunder. These books don't have like good start like jumping points. You gotta read the first story arc to understand what's going on in the second one. Next. Dan Slott comes back to Spider-Man, to this spectacular Spider-Man Brand New Day. God, I hate that logo. I'm not a graphic designer, but I hate it. It's like written with like you know that foam cheese, that cheese on a can. But anyways, in this new other new other extra again Spider-Man title, they're going to the past and Spidey is gonna fight the mob. He found like a list that Wilson Fisk has that has a registry of all the bodies on it. The thing that caught my attention on it, and this is just me speculating, that I think by the fact that they call it Brand New Day, I think it's gonna be somehow related to the new movie. I'm not sure. I didn't research that, but I have a feeling. I'm really not sure, not even sure what the new movie is about now that I think about it. All I know is that we left from the last one with this sort of reset to Peter Parker and everything, but I don't know. I'm pretty sure Mr. Negative is gonna be in it, which gives my detective senses tingling to think that the plot of this book is gonna be somehow related to the movie. I don't know. You're asking me like, am I recommending this title just because of that? Yes. Yes, because even if Dan Slott has done good things and everything, I'm not like a Dan Slott fanatic, so I wouldn't go like, oh, Dan Slott is doing Spider-Man again, go read it. No. Or do I think it's gonna be like a breakthrough thing, considering it's in the past? I have no idea. But perhaps we're going to see some of these characters later in the movies, which is a nice reminder of their existence. Mr. Negative is supposed to be really powerful, but sometimes you can go years not ever having nothing with him. Whatever. Next. This is my book of the week, my awaited return of Barbara Gordon to a solo book in Barbara Gordon Breakout. And as I said it last week and several other mentions, I've loved how they brought all the Gotham kind of like storylines together. I love it because so often, especially in Marvel and DC, so happens that you get these storylines that have really divided sort of rhythms. That was the word I was looking for. So you get something way forward or way in the past, or things that are like happening in a parallel way. But now if you see Barbara in prison, it's related to whatever is happening in Poison Ivy and in Batman. What else do we have though? Well, Batgirl is somehow related, but I don't know if they're gonna bring it back. But at least that core is right there. And it's been a while since Barbara had like her own book. And in the context of what is going on in Gotham, by the fact that Mariko Tamaki is writing it, and well, everything makes it for a really interesting book. This new Vandal Savage regime in Gotham Police. How is she gonna react? What is she gonna do? I've been a Batgirl fan for a long time. She was my main in Injustice. And I was looking forward for a solo book from her. Now, what is Nightwing gonna do? That's an interesting question. Because she has been really kind of like coupling with Dick. She's been coupling with Dick. They've been really close lately. I think that they have somehow not implied, but they have tried to slide in this concept of them finally becoming a permanent couple. If there's one couple that could beat Harley and Ivy in the kind of like Gotham sub-universe of DC would be Barbara and Dick. And they are like the pinnacle of romantic stories for me. So let's say a lot of people or characters to react to that. Barbara in the spotlight again, having her solo book. How will this affect her privately? I don't know. We haven't seen Jim Gordon too much either since he retired and he had an affair with the mayor's wife. But she's right there in the middle of a context where really interesting things could happen, both with the character and with the main Gotham storyline. Barbara Gordon Breakout. It feels like so when they announced this, like 5 months, no, maybe 4 months ago. It feels like it came super fast. Well, we'll see. Next. So I've been kind of like hard on Captain America and the road to Armageddon. I began really hyped with it. The hype have kind of like toned down. The rhythm has gone down, and Armageddon comes in 1 month, and the press release for Captain America number 11 or issue 11 was the foundational piece of plot for Armageddon. So you gotta read it if you want to understand in a more subtle way or in a more like dedicated commentary on the story itself. It's clearly that Thunderbolt Ross as the Red Hulk is gonna create his own sort of problems. It's gonna, like, you have the US government that sort of spawned his Hulk Corps. I think they're calling them the Hulk Corps, but it's basically just a bunch of Hulks. Spawned that, Shield, and the mission of Captain America. And as I said at the beginning of this run of Captain America, and when Armageddon was like 3 months ago, there was this really interesting commentary on the role of America and their intervention in other societies, political systems, maybe even democracies if you want to call it. But that storyline or that sort of plot development got a little bit skewed, and it went towards the more fantastic, the more comic-y kind of like area, which is to be expected though. But now that that whole political setup has been kind of like, it peaked, and now you have a super villain in Latveria, and you have all the factions are in play for the event. Well, maybe not the Avengers so much, but they're gonna be there, of course, called Avengers. But now you have like the super Hulk-oriented type of team, you can call it. But of course, that is a direct evolution from the One World Under Doom and the current status of Thunderbolt Ross, which is, it has become sort of like the main antagonist. Between him and the current leader of Latveria, you have a two-pronged kind of like a villain side. The problem is, or the question is, where will the good guys stand? I thought the discussion was gonna be highly political, but since we only have Captain America in it by now, and a little bit of Wolverine with the whole weapons of whatever, it's getting really hard to predict what Armageddon is gonna be about. That's what I have to say. And in a sense, that's a good thing, you know. That's a hook for the event. That, at least to me, has worked perfectly. Next. I wasn't a fan of Death Spiral. I mentioned it last week, I think. And well, in this spin-off extra book, Death Spiral Body Count, they are promising the origins of the whatever his name, the bad guy with the weird thing on his face. I kept thinking about why didn't we get this before? You know, why didn't we knew before who this bad guy was? Why are we learning about it now, after it ended? I don't know, man. It feels strange. And of course, the hook is already there. The event is already over. Like the bad guys, the good guys and the bad guys already are on their way, and the big mystery remains who this guy is. And I even feel it a little bit manipulative, you know. Like we're not gonna show you who he is until after the event, and of course you are curious about it. Like, why would this guy wanna kill loved ones for Peter, Eddie Brock, and Mary Jane? Why? Why the fuck? Who was he? Who the fuck was he? Well, if you wanna know who was he, you better you better read Dead Spiral Body Count, number 1. I will do it, but I will be like raising an eyebrow, like, Next. Doctor Strange is finally coming back in a way to Midgard, aka the Earth. I recommended the Doctor Strange kind of like. He's not the Sorcerer Supreme of Asgard, right? Is it? I think he is by title. At the beginning, it was interesting. He had some thriller-like murder stories to deal with, but by the end of the day, I didn't really love it, because I thought they were gonna play a little bit more on his character. You know, the last Doctor Strange story that was really good was when he faced the Colonel, was that version of him who was this deranged, militarized dictator who got stuck fighting a war for millions of years. That was the last Doctor Strange story that I thought was great. But in this one, they didn't really delve further into sort of Asgard politics, not necessarily politics, but like organizational things. They didn't deal a lot with the magic either, with his status as Sorcerer Supreme. And I've been trying to get into the whole magic renaissance in Marvel, if you want to talk about it. You had Wicca and Witch's role, you had Wanda being Sorcerer Supreme, you had a little bit of a fling of magic there. So Doctor Strange finally reuniting with Clea and having a meetup with Wanda, it was the one thing that was unavoidable, right? That was the one thing that was supposed to happen. How will his experiences in Asgard condition what he's gonna do now in Midgard, aka Earth? I don't think it's gonna be such a big deal, and that's sort of the problem. Now, as he comes back to Earth, you gotta ask, what out of all the things he experienced in Asgard, out of all those things, how many of those things really affected him coming back to Earth? Did any of these things really change him or affect him in any way, so he can come back to Earth and have a different perspective? I would say almost none. He just have like new things to be arrogant about, which is kind of like a Doctor Strange thing anyways. But yeah, that's the big thing. He's going back to interact with Earth, and it was a fun run. I don't know if he's gonna leave Asgard completely, but it was a good storyline nonetheless. Now we're gonna see what goes on when Sorcerer Supremes interact with each other. Next. Geoff Jones, kind of like, is it a multiverse? Is it a universe? I've mentioned this before, how in Image they have been allowing creators to have their own little multiverses, and or like, just, it's not a multiverse, it's a universe where every title from a creator is interconnected. You have the whole Radiant Black thing. What is it? It's called the Massive Verse, I think. What else you have? You have a couple more, but in the case of Geoff Johns, you have this. What is it? The Unnamed. But anyways, Geoff Johns, of course, an industry powerhouse, if you want to call it like that, created this universe where all of his titles are connected by the way of time. It's a really interesting concept because it's not just classic time travel or anything. Somehow, they in comics they're always traveling through time, past, present, whatever. Who cares? But he made all of his books into just one timeline. Which basically implies that there are way higher stakes to be interconnected between. That there's not like multiple timelines yet. It's just this big one. So you have the Simon Pure, the British guy who has eternal life. You have Geiger, who lives in the post-apocalyptic future. You had a bunch of people in the past. The robot guy, what's his name? Robert Joe. Anyways, it's just one time, or at least it feels like it. He might branch it out later. But now in Geiger, one of the titles, we had the Northerner, which is a time traveler, who is doing things that are kind of like interesting in a way that I didn't really expect Geiger to be kind of like the core of this. You can even call it like a small tiny event, because whatever things he's gonna do in this point of the timeline as a time traveler, they will affect the rest of Geoff Johns' overall narrative, which is kind of interesting. It was interesting because it was a surprise first. Second, because Geiger is one of the fun books from him. Geoff Johns maintains this even kind of like 90s vibe to his books. This classic violent fantasy, with the same sort of plot lines you get back then. But overall, I think the idea of allowing these creators to have their own universes among all of their books, it's been good. And now Geoff Johns is really showcasing the potential of that. Because even if all of these books were related by a single unifying timeline, they have all felt unique. I keep forgetting the name of Simon Pure's book. Is it like Red Coat? I think so, yeah. They all have felt unique, and they all have felt that they can live on their own corner of this little universe. So you have this little rock in the form of the Northerner, and you can sort of experience an interconnected universe without the necessity of having a massive event or like, oh, this is gonna change everything forever. No, you can play around with little things and introduce some big things. Like there is a mystery in Geoff Johns' timeline where everything goes to shit. So I don't know if he's gonna introduce a main villain or something, but I don't know. But anyways, Geiger is the playground, or this issue of Geiger is a landmark in the playground of Geoff Johns' timeline, which is fine because it's fun. Next, finally, I'm gonna talk about the current run of Iron Man. In issue 5, he's facing finally we are getting somewhere as he faces what is the name? I'm Iron Man is Advanced Iron Man. this foe called Advanced Iron Man, which of course spells I'm. How, how did they say it in English? AIM. AIM. That's complicated. AIM. The whole story of this current run of Iron Man was that Madame Mask, the new head of AIM, she captured a bunch of people and put them into a stressful situation, hoping that they would get a spark of brilliance and imitate Tony Stark somehow, so that they would have their own Tony Stark to build them funny and curious things. Of course, Tony Stark learned about this and went to rescue these prodigies. The storyline in the book has been a little bit lacking in a sense to me, that it wasn't that impactful. It had that vibe of, when they do these Iron Man stories, they bring him back to this very basic concept of him being traumatized by people using his weapons. That's kind of like a recurrent topic for modern Iron Man. He wants to get rid of all of the weapons made out of his technology, just like in the movies, and one of the biggest storylines of the past 20 years for the character. But anyways, that didn't really hit here in this storyline. What they did was have one of these geniuses, the one that they kidnapped. I am kidnapped one of these geniuses, and they made him being the complete opposite of Tony Stark. So he sort of highlighted a genius from a different perspective and kind of showed how flawed Tony Stark is. It's like, and Tony of course had a moment with him by saying oh, he was the best version of me. If you're gonna get a bunch of people and try to make a new Tony Stark, he should have been the one, because he's a better version of me. But anyways, that more emotional, character-based part of the plotline got sort of swept up for the sake of more action and for the sake of Advanced Iron Man, which is the point we are now. So I'm kind of warm towards it. I think the story didn't reach, as I said, the emotional and commentary levels that you would like. They didn't put that much pressure into Tony, so he didn't really have that. And now we reach the kind of comic booky sort of half climax. I don't know how long this run is gonna be, but the climax of this story with the introduction of this new Iron Man. What I like about this new Iron Man is that it has a lot of strong commentary on artificial intelligence, and it reminds me of the Ironmonger and all of these armored villains, which are basically the best villains for Iron Man, because they are a reflection of Tony Stark and Iron Man. Armored, militarized, technophile sort of concepts of villains. Those are the best villains for Iron Man. That is his place. So in a way, I'm excited to see what they do with this new foe, where they take him. I like that he is an equal, but I don't like that the storyline of the kidnapped geniuses didn't really mature in a way that I would like it to have matured. And the rest of the more personal areas of the plotline, which have we have Pepper back, and we have Melinda May, the one of the remnants of the old glorious Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., right? Her comic book version. And Madame Mask. We have all of these three female characters, which is kind of like an Iron Man thing, right? None of them really pushed the story either towards them or either towards them and their relationship with Tony. Even Pepper being Pepper, and even Madame Mask having the story that they have. Nothing really matured yet to a point where you can have the classic Tony Stark freak out, personal freak out. But anyways, this is a fun juncture in the story, a fun point, and we are expecting to have some armor hijinks and some armor mumbo jumbo when Iron Man faces advanced Iron Man. You know, if this is a proper Iron Man book, we're gonna have Tony, of course, inventing or creating some technology to face advanced Iron Man. Who knows? We'll see. Next. I talk trash about Knull, and I sort of stand by it. This is a book that has a lot of kind of like parallel, segue, tangential relevance to the upcoming Queen in Black story. It just felt like, oh, we're gonna talk about Knull. We're gonna make him more powerful, so he absorbs the light. It's just weird. It feels like the story of Knull is not as important as whatever is happening inside the book. What do I mean by this? We don't really have character development for Knull. He's just this bad guy who gets new powers by defeating Thanos, and then Thanos gets his own upgrade. You know, it's like functional. This book has felt like that, like functional. Hasn't really felt creepy, even if it's regarding to villains. It doesn't really felt relevant, you know. It feels like just a setup for the Queen in Black books. I'm not sure when they are coming. So yeah, I retain, or I sustain my thoughts on it by just being an okay book. It didn't went into the direction that I wanted. You still need to recommend it, or you still need to pay attention for it, because as I said, really low key they change a little bit of Thanos' current status. So if they're changing the status of two big villains, Knull and Thanos, you're kind of forced to pay attention. Is that fair, considering that the book itself hasn't been that much entertaining? Perhaps, but that's up to you to decide. To me, it still remains quite a mediocre book, but since it's full of lore and setup for what's coming, I think it's necessary to pay attention to it. Knull is such a shitty character, man. Such a shitty character. Next. I never expected what Absolute Batman was gonna do with the Absolute Robins. Let's just leave it at that. Because they change the whole relationship. You know, I mentioned before how in these Absolute Universe settings, you can always see some degree of the main universe characters in them, or the way they portray them in this, under this light, sort of makes sense. For Absolute Batman, the biggest change might have been the fact that most of his foes were all friends, like most of Killer Croc, Two-Face, the Penguin, like they were all friends. But when they turned evil and when they became supervillains, somehow they fell right into the categories or tropes that the main villains in the main book have. You know, so it's different, but the same at the same time. Now with the Robins, now being this authority-led sort of super squad. Even in that core, they look like fucking Power Rangers or Transformers. It's hard to see the connection between them and Batman. And the trick is that you know they're gonna do it. And here's where the fun part is. A completely different origin for a character, but their name is Robins, so you know they're gonna have a connection with Batman. Even more so than the whole oh, you can never kind of like delete the fact that, I don't know, Uncle Ben died, and you know how they say that shit in comics, like there are things that you're never gonna change. I think one of those things that you can never change is the fact that Robin is Batman's partner. How are they gonna reframe this team of basically like SWAT police that are the Robins in the absolute Batman universe? How are they gonna relate it to Batman, which is a completely different character? This is not a friendly Batman. Like he had his friends, right, who became their not necessarily enemies yet, but he is like really fucked up with that. So this is not an adult friendly Batman. You know, this is not a Batman that you see taking in proteges. Proteges? Proteges. You don't see this Batman doing so because he himself is not in control. You know? You can't be a master if you're not a master of yourself, would say the Sphinx on Mystery Man. So the play and the game they're gonna do with the Robins in Absolute Batman, I think is amazing. It's so fun. It's so interesting and exciting to see how they're gonna frame it, if they're gonna do it at all, if they're gonna make the Robins being Batman's partner at all. What they project as the source of authority in Gotham to face against the Batman, basically making him more of an outlaw, making him more of a vigilante. The setting is great. I'm sort of missing a more kind of like a clear objective currently in Absolute Batman. You know, before you had like Bane or whatever. Like I'm kind of missing like that. But that's one of the advantages that the Absolute Universe has, that since it's a new setting, you can still find so much fun in how they are crafting this new world without necessarily having a main enemy, or like an objective at sight. It's great. Absolute Batman. Next. We're gonna go quickly by Something is Killing the Children, because last time I said that I was kind of tired of the world expansion. Well, in the main book, which I said you can keep reading the main book. The main book is again dealing with flashbacks, and I'm warm to it. Okay, I don't hate it, but I don't love it either. This also kind of like reiterates my point I made a couple of weeks ago, that the first story arc for Something is Killing the Children was so good, and I wish it could have stayed in that lane instead of going for the world building. But I don't lose hope or enjoyment out of the main book, because even if this flashback, even if everything remains about world building for this series, at least these flashbacks are related to Erica, and I really want Erica to be the center of the book, at least of the main one. I really want that to be the case. So this is another flashback area. I know a lot of people are pissed about it, but this is a world, a universe that it already got us. You know, if you enjoyed it, it's really hard to leave now. By now, Erica's past with her mentor has been really fun, and it has been like it has a lot of heart. And if the spin-off and world building of the whole order of what was the name? San Dumas? I don't know, but the whole order that kills monsters, which they belong, they can keep expanding on their own. Just give us Erica and her life and her story in the main book, because you know that the future of the franchise is related to her. No matter how much you build, the foundation was Erica's first story. So there's no doubt in my mind, absolutely no doubt in my mind, that eventually is gonna come back to her, either facing the order, trying to dismantle the order. I don't know. It's gonna come back to her, just as we are, as we keep returning to the main series of Something is Killing the Children, regardless of them being so keen into making flashbacks and other stories besides the main character. Next. This is a little update on Transformers. Man, Megatron is crazy. So, this new issue of Transformers is going to focus on Elita going back to Cybertron as the new Prime and having her own team of Transformers. And he's going to face the leader of the Decepticons still in Cybertron, who is Shockwave. What I think is interesting about this is that will they follow the two paths, how loosely they will do it, and how influential is going to be the connection between whatever is going on in Cybertron with whatever is going on Earth. Because after last issue, clearly Megatron is the bigger threat. I don't want to spoil it, go read it. Megatron goes for some hardcore shit and he experiences some really strong things, which I think no other version of Megatron has ever gone through what he did in the comic, I think. But anyways, like a tiny bit update of this idea of expanding the Transformers comic universe and to have a spotlight on Cybertron and a spotlight on Earth. This might be a little bit dangerous, and this might just divide your attention in different ways. I wish they would make 2 books. Sometimes I'm not too optimistic or keen on it, but in this case, they should just make 2. Transformer story in Cybertron and Transformer story on Earth. If they are not doing it, it means that they're gonna be interconnected and they're gonna be repercussions, and they're gonna keep on interacting, which is also fine. But up until now, the biggest appeal of the Transformer books, especially in Daniel Warren Johnson's first run, now it's by Kirkman, was on Earth. The biggest interesting points and kind of like the intensity of it was on Earth. And with Megatron being so crazy on Earth, the main attention keeps being there. So if they're going to give us something intense and interesting in Cybertron, it's going to be starting this issue, Transformer issue 32. So that's pretty cool. Still remains a great book. Go get it. Next. Just another little update. I talk about the Uncanny X-Men all the time, and I'm just gonna do a little bit of kind of like commentary on the fact that they are playing again with my emotions. I keep saying that this is my favorite couple. I keep saying praising Gambit and Rogue's relationship. I was so elated when the concept of family appeared during the previous issues or the previous moment of the current storyline for Uncanny X-Men. But now they're gonna play with my emotions, and they have brought Gambit back to that point of the what's the name of the Thieves Guild, right? He's back to participating in the Thieves Guild, and apparently this big reveal of the mysterious inmate in Grandma King, like we have, this is the biggest mystery. There's like this mutant that is supposed to be so powerful that is being keeping a prisoner by the Grandma Hill people. How is this related to Gambit, and how will it change the Uncanny X-Men is something that I'm not looking forward. You know? And look at that cover, man, like Gambit being pretty evil. They always take what I like. If I could have Rogue and Gambit just moving out to the beach and being happy, I will read that comic. Just 13 pages of them, like sipping margaritas in a beach and being happy, having a family vacation or something. I don't know. But that's a little bit of an update on Uncanny X-Men. It's exciting, but nerve-wracking. Don't disappoint me. Or don't make me suffer too much. Next. Last but not least, a little bit of a commentary on Wolverine's solo book. It came into the news a lot recently because he faced this adamant whatever, like this kind of like entity of the true adamantium. It's a concept that is really weird. It's a really freaky concept of adamantium not being like the final form of adamantium and having a stronger form of the metal. I don't know, but everybody was talking about him having his claws breaking, and I thought this run of Wolverine was okay, but it wasn't that interesting until the claw thing, because the claw thing implies that they're gonna play around with the character a little bit more. They're gonna do some lore change potentially, and that is something that you just need to pay attention to. I know it's manipulative when they go like a big change in the character, or like something you will never forget, or what is the other one they always use? Nothing is gonna be the same again. You know, those words and phrases are manipulative to sell books, but it's Wolverine, and you know, what are they gonna come up later? He went back to the bone claws for a time. Like, was he gonna have like super adamantium claws? And plus, they said on the press release that this was gonna be somehow connected to the Armageddon event. So an update on a long-standing character like Wolverine, plus tie-ins to the upcoming event, which, as I've said, we haven't had that much or that many. If this is gonna be the setup for how Wolverine is gonna be in Armageddon, between this and Wolverine Weapons of Armageddon, you have a really interesting new state of affairs for Wolverine. And as he remains one of the most important characters in the Marvel Universe, I think this is something to pay attention to. That's the whole update. Pay attention to it. Who knows what's going to happen? And that's another week of comic books. Went a little bit lengthier, but as always, we have my friendly, practical timestamps in the video, so you can just check my comments on whatever book you think is interesting. Some final comments on Marvel's Midnight. I'm skeptical because if you tie it to horror, everything is gonna be tied to horror, and that is not the case for the Absolute Universe. It's not tied to horror, but it's tied to the characters. You make a new commentary on the core and essence of these characters. You don't limit them to horror. You don't limit them to one specific field. You don't limit them. You just it's gonna feel like, okay, these are just the X-Men on a horror setting. You know, Absolute Batman is not Batman in a horror setting. It's not Batman in a violent setting. It's not. It's literally a risking commentary on the character's essence. And that is the brilliance of the Absolute Universe. These are new characters, new settings, but they feel like they hold the essence of the characters they are portraying. That was the main thing about the Absolute Universe. It felt like a new starting point for all characters with a fresh coat of paint. The freshest, that paint you smell and get high on. Fresh paint. But anyways, that's a week. We'll see what's going on next week. We'll see what Midnight turns out to be. It's comics. Every week, something new. Live in their world, the absolute world. Thank you for listening, and read you all next week. Ooh, that's a good catchline. Read you all next week. Bye.